Okay, here we go.
Leave. Continue.
Hello, Caitlin Walker.
In.
So we've decided to do this little bit of a conversation around the kinds of participants that we might get when we're training. And we're both trainers. And recently we had a little bit of a chat about a particular model for participants who turn up in training. And that model describes participants quite loosely as explorers, tourists, or prisoners. And for the benefit of some of our listeners who might not know what those mean, so the explorers are the participants who really want to be there. They signed up for it, they're internally motivated to learn, and they will participate. The tourists are there for some fun. So they're kind of likely to just be waiting and seeing, they're kind of observing before they decide what else is going to happen next or what else they'll do. And then there are the prisoners, right? The ones who really do not want to be at that training at all. They're probably mandated to attend. And for whatever other reasons, they're forced to be there. And these might be participants who are really silent or sullen or plain rebellious because you just can't stand it that they're being made to attend. So you, more than I, thankfully, have trained groups where attendees did not sign up for the training. I'm thinking about the youth work you did in the early stages of systemic modeling, and of course the dinner ladies who had like massive conflict with each other, right?
Lots of diversity and inclusion training as well, where people are mandated. You know, it's that idea that your thoughts aren't good enough, therefore you have to get some training.
Okay, and so I wanted to chat with you about what you do when you have these kinds of prisoner participants in a training. So what do you do if, for example, they don't speak up at all?
So I think in order to answer that, I have to go a step further back. And that is to think, what is it like for me if I am forced to go somewhere that I don't want to go? Like, what wouldn't work for me? What wouldn't work for you? If you were told to go to a training and you were busy and you didn't want to do it and you didn't think you should have to do it, it's like, what wouldn't work? Well, what wouldn't work is being jollied along. You know, I hate being jollied. What wouldn't work is being bullied, forced. So I don't want to be jollied, cajoled, bullied. I don't want to be told how it'll be good for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm in that arena, I think, really. And so, first of all, I'd go to those things which are a form of persecution or rescue. Those things won't work for me. And let's assume they're not going to work for other people.
Yeah.
That's my first thing, is I don't assume that they're going to. And so then when you were saying, what do we do with people who don't talk?
Yeah.
So again, a couple of things with that is, in a group of people, you'll usually get some people who will just generally, they're quite interested, like your natural explorers. And actually, generally, I'm a natural explorer. You can put me in all sorts of situations and I get curious about what's happening. And you sit back and watch touristy sort of, I'll keep an eye on this, but I'm not going to really get involved. So generally in a group, you'll have enough of those that something is happening. So even if people are quiet, you can ask a question and get a couple. But the main thing I'm doing in my mind is going, I wonder what's happening for them right now, and how is this the most perfect response to what's going on? How is their silence, their non-participation, beautiful feedback, a little example of what's going on in the system? How is it perfect? And so the first thing that you do is, by doing that, is I stay in an anti-fragile, curious, present to what is state. And I don't get into any of the drama responses. I don't try and rescue the situation. I don't. So I might at some point go, so I'll tell you what, I've heard from so-and-so and so-and-so, and there's a lot of people I've heard from. And I'm just interested at the moment, what is going on? So I'm just going to take a few seconds and I'm going to say, this was the remit for this training. This is what I've been asked to come here and do. This is what I've heard so far, but there's also a lot of silence. I'm going to find out from you, what's going on for you?
Hmm.
And then I'll generally look around, and usually when people are silent, there's again one or two who want to tell you why they're not speaking. So generally I can get them, they'll say something like, you know, we're really busy, we didn't want to be here. Okay, so you were really busy, we are here, it's booked in. What's the best use of our time? Or somebody might say, if this happened once, I had about 40 people in front of me, and somebody said, well, I don't know what you think you're doing here. We've just all been told that a third of us will lose our jobs today, and they're not going to tell us until lunchtime. And so I just stop and go, okay, why would they engage in training? They're in a full reptilian brain state. They think they're going to lose their jobs. So I stop, I change my position. So I no longer stand for the thing that I was there for, change my position. So, okay, given that, what's the best use of our time? We are here, you've got me, what shall we do? And so it's about maintaining your own state, but it's about being present to what is, not to what you think it should have been, not how your training should be.
And that also requires you to kind of be open and aware about what's really happening in front of you right now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm also noticing by doing that, when you say, I haven't heard from some people, and let's find out, looking around the room, what's going on for you, you're actually looking for evidence, right? Because you might be, or I might be holding some assumptions about those participants. And already I might be thinking, oh, you're a prisoner. You don't want to be here. And doing that allows them to give you evidence about what is really going on for them.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Jack. So if I decide that they're resentful, my response makes that assumption, and then I'm kind of lost. Because if they're not resentful and I made that assumption, I now demonstrate that I'm completely out of rapport with the group. I've had that before. I've seen somebody who was scowling and glaring and wouldn't answer any questions. It was quite a small group. My term, so she was doing this, doing that, tutting. And then she'd invited me to come and speak. So I said afterwards, I said, you know, and I noticed that there was a lot of this, a lot of that. And I just wondered what was happening for you. She said, oh, it's just genius. It's just genius. She said, I was thinking, this isn't an away day. This is a way of life. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, okay. That's your fighter face. Okay. Who knew?
Who knew? And
but if I'd tried to cajole her or rescue her when she was doing it, I'd have never have known, and I could have spoilt it for her. You know, like you've got this fine line as a facilitator to go, okay, something's going on and I'm going to call it, or something's going on, I've noticed it, but actually I don't really know what it is. So I'm going to keep an eye on it, but I'm not going to call it yet. You know, it's a fine line you've got to tread.
And what if after several invitations for the silent ones to also contribute, they remain silent, one or two remain silent? What would you do with participants like that? I'm
sorry, I'm smiling because it reminds me of working with Michael Mallows, the late, great Michael Mallows. We were in a school, it's a school we often tell stories about, with the senior managers. And it was before I fully had the drama model in our stable of models. And nobody spoke. And we asked them, we said, okay, I've noticed nobody's speaking. What's going on here? And nothing. And they were so embedded in inaction. And Michael said, you know, he said, I look around the room and at least a third of you are going to be dead in 10 years. Statistically, you're an older population. He said, and I just want to check, if you think back to when you came into teaching and what was important to you and the way you're behaving right now in this minute, is this how you'd like to spend the rest of your working life?
Oh.
So I don't generally do that because
that's rather extreme, don't you think?
Michael was an incredible provocateur, but he also, it got them talking. And they said, no, they said, we're really resentful. And they said, there is no point of saying anything because whatever we do, the head will sabotage it. And so what the silence was about was that they did want to change, but they'd lost hope. Having somebody ask them generative questions felt like such an attack on an already sad little system that Michael's provocation allowed them to then express actually how angry they were, not with me or him, but with the situation. And then from there, that's when Michael introduced me to the drama model and explained that this is they were protecting themselves through inaction. They tried and tried and tried and failed and failed and failed. So again, I think another thing to do is to use David Grove's term, keep being interested. I wonder what I'm not seeing, but has to be there for what they're doing to make sense. And keeping that state of mind, and then being flexible, going, do you know what? This isn't working for me. I don't know what's happening. I want to be useful. And if worse came to worse, I might just say, do you know what? I'm paid to be here and I can't compel you to. So if there's better things that you'd like to be doing, you probably need to do that now.
So in that moment, how do you decide who or what you're allegiance to? Because presumably you have a contract to fulfill with the person who commissioned you. And then you also have to consider what's going on for the participants in front of you and what they would like to have happen. So what or who is your allegiance to?
I try and hold those two things simultaneously. So I'll often say to the group, I've been commissioned to do this. These are my remits, and I don't know you, and I don't know what's happening for you. So what would you like to, given this, what would you like to have happen? So I try and hold those two things together. For example, with that one where the people had been told they were going to lose their job, at that point, I completely lose my allegiance to the company. Because to have been put in front of a group of people and not told that vital piece of information, my contract with the company, which was for generative development, has to go, because you cannot put your staff up for generative development. We had a similar one where somebody contracted me to build collective trust, and then they were going to come and watch the trainings so they could see how people responded so that they could sack anyone who didn't partake.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'm just going to call a halt. It was about 15 minutes before we started. I said, I'm just going to call a halt on this. I said, if that's your purpose, I said, I'm not going to do this. And we had to renegotiate very quickly what we would or wouldn't do. And so I think that your allegiances change because you're looking for congruence. As a facilitator, I'm looking, if they want this from their participants, are they creating the conditions? And was it a good idea? Do you know, was it a bad idea? Are we better off to spend this time having the participants feedback everything that's going wrong for them? Potentially, is that a better use of our time? Because at least then I can go back to the commissioners and say, here's what I noticed.
And so when you're training and you're discovering this as you go along, and there's this emergent thing that's happening, how do you know when there's congruence between allegiance to the group and then allegiance to the contract?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'll have done it with clean scoping before I started generally. And you'll notice that if things go wrong, it's because I didn't scope it with the right people. So with each of those incidences that I'm telling you about, with the school, the local authority chose the school. The school didn't choose itself. There weren't enough people in that group who wanted the change. Or it's been too rushed. Someone said, oh, we've got this money, can you go in and do it? We think this is what you want. And oh, by the way, can you do it Tuesday? No. And when those things have happened, if I'm working at my best, I would slow down and I would recontract with those people in this moment better. Because there isn't congruence. When there is congruence, it's because usually somebody's had an idea, we've tested it with a small group of them, they've tried it out themselves, they've made a difference to their behavior, they know it's congruently what they want, and they can stand by it. So it fits together, you know, like those children's cups that...
one that nest one into the other. Yeah.
They fit nicely. You haven't jumped from a little tiny one to a great big one.
Yeah. So the other way that I know that I'll have congruence is when I'm doing clean scoping, and I say to the client, sometimes in this work, new stuff might emerge. And are you going to be okay if that stuff emerges and I need to change tack because my allegiance is going to be to the well-being of the group? And then if the client goes, yes, I'm okay with that, then I know that I've gotten myself quite a bit of a leeway to change and still be congruent with the contract and with the participants, and still honor both. Yeah. So I think that that bit of clean scoping is quite a vital piece of the process.
I mean, I think what we forget with clean scoping sometimes is it's not just about finding out about a project or scoping a project. It's about testing whether the project can handle you or systemic modeling. It's checking, that this person can allow for the emergent iterative. So with an iterative project like this, it allows for the emergence and that it can adapt to new behavior.
Okay, so my next question is about some practical do's and don'ts when you have prisoner participants in a training. So what are some do's and don'ts that you would suggest?
So don't spend all your time with the 3 people in the room who like you. Yeah.
No?
People nodding and smiling while 12 people sit with their arms folded or on their phones. You're not doing anyone any favors. So that's the first thing, is that you are there on behalf of the group, not on behalf of the 3 people who like you. So yeah, so the don't is get sucked in with them. The do is go there and then go elsewhere and find out about this. Similarly, the other way around. If 3 people say, I hate this, I shouldn't be here, go, so for you hate this, you shouldn't be there. And who's different from that? Who's having a different experience right now? So just 2 or 3 people, often it's just one, is very vocal. And you might have to hold them. You might have to say, so I know what's going on for you. And let me just check. Here's the remit. Here's what I'm here for. What are other people? When you arrived, what are you expecting? What would you like to have happen from today? And you need to use your presence to keep that person, especially if they feel that they speak for everyone, because they can control the room. So don't get sucked into people who like you. Don't get dominated by people who've got an agenda. And I use my body to take attention from there to here, or okay, we've got that, and now I'm going here. Something that came up the other week, which I think is really important, is when you're here on behalf of an organization, if you start to try and jolly them along or motivate them,
cheerlead them,
you immediately now, by going, I want them to want this training, you now stand for the person, in their eyes, the person who commissioned it. You now legitimately let them attack you. So if you come to them with this training and they don't want to do it, you've got to get interested in how come. Because trying to make them, people don't learn easily when they don't want to learn. So what you don't want to do is to stand up and try and push them along, because they'll go for you. And you are there as an advocate for them and the company, not for the company. So that's the other thing, is the minute you start cheerleading, you make yourself a legitimate target for that anger.
Yeah, because you then become a representative, right, of the very thing that they do not want or they find troubling or problematic. Yeah.
They say to you, why are we doing this training on a Saturday? It's supposed to be our day off. And you start to answer that question. It wasn't you that chose that. You have to move somewhere else and go, so that's really interesting. So for so-and-so, why are we doing this training on a Saturday? Do you know what? I actually don't know why yet, but we can find that out. So let's just park that for a moment. Why are we doing this on a Saturday? Who's got a different question? So you don't have to get in. You don't need to pacify people or get involved with it. Be present to what it is. Are there any more do's and don'ts? Don't do it on your own if you can help it. Have have a partner with different patterns to you, so that if you start to get anxious or worried, or you want to be jollying them along, that partner comes in and just talks over you. Says, see what I'm noticing? Jack's asked these questions and there's tumbleweed. And I'm thinking there must be something else going on here that we don't understand. So let's stop these questions for a minute. Let's just go, what's happening here? Somebody else to meta into your system. That's the other thing. Have somebody, and it's got to be somebody not quite like you. I remember training with James Jeffers once, and somebody was being racist, and I lost my curiosity and I went to silence him, and then James came in and he got the group to silence him too, and we were two on board. What I needed was somebody to say, so I'm noticing that so-and-so said this and Caitlin's saying that. And I'm wondering, I don't know what's happening for him. And I'm wondering what other people are thinking. I needed somebody to spread it out to the group and let the group unpick it.
Yeah. Rather than gang up on him. Yeah.
We took, but all that happened was he didn't turn up to the rest of the training. Didn't do anyone any good.
Yeah, because he got ganged up on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was lovely to have someone who's, funny and thinks lots of things that I think on my side, but actually that wasn't in service of the whole group.
And so what do you do when after kind of facilitating, say, for a few hours or maybe even for a couple of days, you have a participant who just remains silent? I know that for me as a trainer, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what is it that I need to be doing for this participant? And that's not necessarily a good thing because it feels quite rescuey.
Well, I'm thinking years and years and years of trainings where I've had somebody who hasn't spoken for 3 days. One is we might do a game on pattern detection. What are some patterns? And then I might do the triune brain, because I use it's just a metaphor that I use, but I might say, so let's look at some patterns in the mammalian brain. Who here is really talkative? Who here loves that? Who never says a word? So first of all, I might name it without shaming it. Who do we know most about? Who do we know least about? Like that. And then I might go, developmental tasks. So tomorrow, everyone's going to be doing something that's slightly out of the
comfort zone. Yeah.
Out of your patterns. Get together in groups of 3 and find out what are some patterns you're noticing in each other. And then tomorrow we're going to do something different. So you can sometimes do it like that. And I've had that be miraculous where somebody's gone, oh, I'm always the last to speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be the first or the second to speak. And what do you want from everyone else when you do that? Because when we do developmental tasks, the group gives people feedback when they've changed. And she says, I want a Mexican wave. And then she went, no, not really. But every time she spoke, the whole group, and this was scientists, manufacturers in the manufacturing industry, and they weren't used to this sort of behavior. It was hilarious. And after 3 times, she said, I don't want any more Mexican wave, but she did start to talk. And on the 4th day of training, she said, I don't have a degree, everyone else has a degree. And so I'm worried that anything that I say won't be as clever as what everyone else says. It worked her way up through the company. And they all had science degrees. And you go, oh, okay. But I think even if I'd taken her to one side and said, do you know, I'm noticing you're not speaking. How come? I'm not sure we would have got to that realization. And then for the group to go, but you're the one who's the most practical. You're the one that shouts us down. So in a small group, she's really strong. But in that big group of managers, she just didn't feel able to speak. So generally I provoke it. That's what the systemic modeling tools are designed to do, is to get the group detecting patterns in order to find out more about each other, but not in order to make her speak. It's always got to be in your mind. It's got to be fine for her to stay quiet if that's the right thing for her to do.
And so just holding that stance that they are okay, no matter what state they are in, they are okay, for so long as they're not harming themselves or harming somebody else in the group. Yeah.
And the other way to look at that, Jack, is the other way around. If you think they're not okay, you're going to be in the worst position to help them. Once you've decided you know best for them, you've probably stopped learning and you've probably started trying to make them do something.
Yeah. And then that's the time when you start demonstrating all the things that are not about systemic modeling and that are not clean.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is an okay place to leave it then.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.